Participatory Rural Appraisal (PRA). This video contains definitions and principles of PRA and basic PRA tools. Let's familiarize with the terminologies before looking at the definitions of PRA by Chambers. Participatory refers to where people or subject of the study are involved in the process or decision making. Here we are basically referring to the farmers. U.S. Department of Agriculture in 2019 has defined rural as any population, housing or territory not in an urban area. However, PRA can be used both for rural and urban studies or as a developmental tool. Appraisal is the assessment of a situation. It could be the evaluation of problems, potentials, strengths, and needs of the rural community or villages. Definition. Chambers in 1992 has defined Participatory Rural Appraisal (PRA) as a combination of interactive methods that enhance rural and agricultural communities' ability to analyze and understand their situation in a holistic manner and be empowered to plan and act for their betterment. Similarly, in 1994, he has described PRA as a growing family of approaches and methods to enable local people to share, enhance, and analyze their knowledge of life and conditions, to plan and to act. Highlights from the definitions. It is an interactive process whereby local population is empowered, for example, giving them a voice or say in solving their own problems. Indigenous knowledge to action plan, that is making use of local or traditional knowledge to plan and conduct developmental activities in the community. It is a community-oriented and a learning process. Principles of PRA. A reversal of learning is to learn from local people. Learning rapidly and progressively refers to improvisation of the checklist rather than sticking with the rigid structure or blueprint, and exploration of the local knowledge and resources. Offsetting biases refers to listening, observing, and guiding the interviewee and not interrupting, dominating, and/or lecturing during the interview. Using PRA tools with sensitivity for community and their situation. Optimizing trade-offs. Expenditures incurred during the study or project can be optimized by acquiring or obtaining relevant and useful data as much as possible. Triangulating refers to cross-checking the information obtained, for example, confirming or validating the information collected with a third reliable source or party. Approaching people with an open mind, putting aside personal biases and prejudices. Seeking diversity is looking for variations and acceptance in terms of information gathered, for example, taking into consideration of contradictory data. These 6 principles are shared by PRA and RRA. Facilitating analysis by local people is also known as handing over the stick, making the local people figure things out on their own and also let them own it. Practicing critical self-awareness and responsibility is being self-critical or reflective, acknowledging mistakes and learning from them, viewing failure as the pillar of success. Culture of sharing, exchanging knowledge and experiences between people of different backgrounds, for example, between farmers or local people and extension agent or researcher, and between the farmer themselves. Optimal ignorance, knowing what is not worth knowing, or knowing what information is not needed for the current analysis or work. This way, the people involved in the work will be able to screen out information or data without wasting time and other resources. Are additional principles of PRA. PRA tools can be used in various areas such as natural resources management, for example, soil and water conservation, forestry, fisheries, wildlife, community planning, and more. Developing programs for women and the poor in agriculture, and health and food security, all of which are interconnected. Basic PRA tools. Here we will be looking at 10 of them. Brainstorming, focus group, participatory semi-structured interview, also known as SSI, participatory mapping and modeling, transact walk, timeline technique, seasonal calendar, Venn diagrams, matrix ranking or scoring, and constraint analysis. Brainstorming, to enhance the creativity of a group by using collective insight to derive timely solutions to a problem. Focus group refers to qualitative research method in order to gain an understanding of local perceptions, opinions, beliefs, and attitudes to the issue or issues being studied. It is relatively low cost and quick. Participatory semi-structured interview, also known as SSI. It is partly structured with predefined questions and answers and mostly unstructured, which allows the interviewee to express and elaborate their answers. Therefore, it contains open-ended questions. Interview is relaxed and informal, which helps to create comfortable atmosphere for both the interviewer and interviewee. In-depth information collection occurs by encouraging the interviewee to be more open with the answers, as already mentioned. Participatory mapping and modeling is done to get an impression of social and physical layout of the village, for example, of soils, vegetation, cropping pattern, and more. Maps can be of historical for comparison or futuristic, which illustrates their expectations. Here is an example of resource mapping of a village done by organic agriculture students in 2020. It illustrates types of land use, infrastructures and facilities, livestock, natural resources, and cash crops. Here is another example of resource mapping of a village done by organic agriculture students in 2020. It shows similar resources available in this village. Social and village modeling. It illustrates distribution of household community, is used to indicate social status and well-being of different community members. Resource modeling similarly identify, locate, and classify past and present resource occurrence, distribution, use, tenor, and access. Transect walk. Transect diagrams record information that has been collected on the transect walk. Is done to focus on different zones or microenvironments. It is a form of direct observation of salient features, for example, of topography, water resources, vegetation, cropping systems, grazing areas and livestock, forest cover, and more. Timeline technique is a calendar of historical events or chronological description of important events, as shown in the example prepared by organic agriculture students in 2019, to study the background of the village and trace historical changes and its nature. For instance, changes in climate, occurrence of epidemics, and cropping pattern. The chart shows how things have changed in Georgia over the years, such as education, water supply, health, and more. Similarly, the farmers from Cambodia have illustrated the chronological changes that occurred in their community from 1940s to late 1990s or early 2000s. For instance, people have experienced changes in landscape, natural resources, agriculture practices, natural calamities, and technologies within the stated period. This also helps in visualization of the changes and consequences, which can be further helpful in designing proper development plans. Seasonal calendar is an illustration of schedules of various household activities, events, farming variables, or climatic conditions over a period of time, usually a year. Crop calendars present the pattern of activities related to the production, harvesting, and marketing of specified crops. These calendars can be helpful in organizing when to approach the farmers, that is, when they have less workload, so that they can dedicate the time in engaging with the officials or people seeking information. Venn diagrams illustrate the hypothetical and possible logical relationships among individuals and groups. It can be used to know the impact or influence of local and outside institutions. For example, circles of different sizes represent different institutions with different degree of importance. Baringe Council, youth organization, and women's club seem to have high impact in this community as compared to other institutions such as school, health center, or church, and others. At the same time, overlapping of circles shows the interdependence of institutions with one another. The slight overlapping of the circles of veterinary office and agriculture office shows their interdependence. Similarly, the larger overlapping between Baringe Council and youth organization shows their higher degree of interdependence with one another as associations or institutes. This diagram illustrates the inflow and outflow of goods from a village. The outgoing goods are basically the agricultural produce, and incoming goods include farm inputs and clothing. matrix ranking or scoring, reveals priorities and preferences, such as crop varieties, farming practices, crop species, natural resources management strategies, problems and solutions, and constraint analysis. Farmers from Colombia have prioritized their problem as being low yield due to poor soil. Accordingly, have scored and ranked possible solutions. Number 1 being planting multipurpose trees, and at 4th place is making own compost. Similar things have been prepared by the organic agriculture students in 2019 and 2020, including other tools discussed earlier. Constraint analysis is a methodology for mapping major issues and actions required to create a favorable environment for sustainable livelihood systems. For instance, problem tree analysis can be used to logically map the relationship among constraints in a hierarchy of cause and effect, probing questions such as what is the problem, why the problem exists, how, when, and who needs to act to overcome the constraint, can be asked to identify the main issue and possible chain of events. In the image A, the core problem has been illustrated as total dependence on synthetic fertilizers, with some of the perceived causes and consequences. Some of the perceived causes have been listed as high crop production, easy accessibility to synthetic fertilizers, and its cost effectiveness, among others, while the outcomes have been mentioned as deterioration of soil fertility and decrease in crop yield over the periods. However, in the second image B, although the causes and effects have been clearly shown with a pleasing diagram, the core problem is missing, which makes it unclear about the constraint analysis. Therefore, it is important for the concerned people to be mindful in order to have a productive outcome from such analysis. Constructing a problem tree. The first step is to brainstorm all existing negative conditions that can potentially be resolved. Then discuss the constraints identified and categorize the listing by merging similar issues. Use a sequence of cards to itemize each of the constraints. Determine the core constraint and place it at the center. Identify which of the remaining constraints directly contribute to the focal problem and place them below the main problem. Similarly, the direct and substantive effects of the core problem are identified and placed above it. Other contributing causes and effects are similarly identified and diagrammed. Checklist for a semi-structured interview can be developed by using these 6 helpers such as who, what, where, when, how, and why. Here is the checklist or questions for your community planning of irrigation management program. Who are the users or beneficiaries of the program? Who is going to repair or maintain irrigation system? Under what? Things such as main activities, types of crops grown can be discussed, or contributions of the community towards irrigation establishment. Example, is it going to be in goods, cash, and or labor, or so on and so forth. Problems and conflicts with other users or authorities can also be discussed. Where are the users located? Location of the water and other resources. Where is the boundary for private, government, and other types of resources? And location of irrigation facility. When do they require irrigation? If there were any changes in rule and regulations of irrigation water use, how did it affect the community? Or it could be forecasting of a possible constraints and potentials. Comparison of irrigation usage in the past and present. How they are going to access irrigation water. How they are going to find a solution to the problem and overcome the constraint. Why they are interested in having an irrigation system. People involved in such studies can use their own situation or problems to develop questions